much demo of Miro, maximizing Miro at each stage of the product development lifecycle. I'll go ahead and hand it off to Melissa, who's going to take you through the demo today.
Cool, thanks so much, Lindsay. All right, so hey everyone, I'm Melissa. I am the Manager of Enterprise Product Marketing here at Miro. Really glad to join and be a part of this. I've heard such good things about the previous sessions. This session is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be a product demo, so it's going to be we're going to go through a couple of different features, a couple of different templates, but we're going to journey across the product development lifecycle and show you exactly how you can use Miro at every single stage. So instead of specifically going through an actual framework or methodology like Agile or Lean, we're actually just going to use a very simple framework that is well known by Spotify. And it's the think it, build it, ship it, and tweak it. And essentially, these stages are mapped to every single stage within the product development lifecycle. Now, it's never quite this linear, right? And I think I speak on behalf of many people that sometimes the product dev lifecycle feels more like this. And if you're not familiar with Bop It, it's this kid's toy that has this narrator that tells you what to pull and what to twist. And it feels like you're kind of haphazardly going through this game until you finally beat it till the end, and you kind of go through this like Simon Says sort of game. So sometimes the product dev lifecycle can feel a little bit like this for many reasons. And the thing is that what we are thinking through when it comes to the product development lifecycle is, how do we really turn an idea into an awesome product? How do we really develop those ideas, brainstorm, validate, do our due diligence, and make sure that what we're shipping is actually going to fulfill a user's needs? And I wanted to start here. And if you're familiar with this, I'm not going to go through the Agile Manifesto, but I did want to point out something here, is that great minds gather around a whiteboard. And I'm going to zoom in here and show you that the founding members of the Agile Manifesto, or the founding authors, actually gathered around this whiteboard. You can go and look up the Agile Manifesto on Google and search through there. But the point here is that a lot of ideas start at the whiteboard, and it's where we workshop a lot of complex ideas. Now, the thing is, though, is whiteboards come in many shapes and forms. So there might be the right idea of a whiteboard, but maybe it's the wrong execution. So we started with whiteboards on specific walls, right? So we have a smaller whiteboard here, we have a bigger whiteboard here, but then we realized we needed to make them more portable. So we put it on wheels. And we made larger whiteboards with stands. And here is probably something you're familiar with if you're co-located. You have a whiteboard in a room and everyone's gathered around it, and you might be running out of space and you flip it over. And so we realized that we needed more space, we need more portability, and we figured, okay, let's go ahead and invent whiteboard paint and just paint whole walls and take up whole entire wall spaces within an office. And I'm sure this is a familiar sight to a lot of you guys that are attending today, but you still run out of space, right? And it's not that these whiteboards aren't necessarily great, but you also run into these issues. Does this whiteboard even look clean? Do not erase, or the infamous, let's take a picture of the whiteboard and post it on Slack and never see it again. So the thing is that these solutions are great to an extent, but it actually breaks down the moment one person is not in the same room. And actually, Chris O'Donnell, the SVP of product at HubSpot, said earlier today that there's always at least one person in their meetings that is calling in on Zoom. And so already we're seeing that this is a reality, whether teams are co-located, distributed, or remote, or they have hybrid setups where sometimes they're remote parts of the week and then others they're in the office. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, this solution around a physical whiteboard really just breaks down the moment even one person is in the room. So going back to Spotify's product development lifecycle, I wanted to go through what this would look like in Miro, because this is exactly where Miro comes in. we have an online digital whiteboard that is an endless canvas. And for some of you, you are familiar with the product, which is great. And for the Think It stage here, which is the first stage of the product development lifecycle, I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but this just shows you the breadth of what you can do within Miro itself. So you can do everything from research and discovery, brainstorm and ideation, UX design, product processes and requirements, and concept presentation. Now, under each of these categories, I've listed some template examples, and we're going to go through some of those examples in just a bit. But in this stage, usually, you have these 3 roles here. So you have a product owner, or even a product manager, a developer, and a designer. And a lot of this stage is really validating, is the product or feature worth building, and why? And I'm going to zoom out now, so hopefully this doesn't overwhelm everyone. But here's just a high level view of some of the templates and some of the things that you can do within Miro at this stage. So I'm just going to go over it very quickly here. There's a mind map. You can upload relevant content. You can actually do a customer journey map, a user story map with Jira integration, wireframing in tandem during this whole process, and then flowcharts. Now, the reason I'm showing you these specifically is just to give you an idea of what you could do, but really there's a long laundry list of all that you can do within Miro, but for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on just a couple of things here. So the mind map template is one that actually helps with quickly brainstorming and ideating. And this is great within Miro because, again, it's collaborative and you have the ability to go ahead and actually include more options here as nodes and child of the kind of main part here in the mind map. And you have the ability to go ahead and change the style and the fonts within the mind map, and it's completely interactive at this point. Now the thing here is, so I'm gonna go in here and show you what this exactly looks like. So I can quickly include an idea here. I can just press enter, and we can put all of our complex thoughts on paper or on the Miro board, so to speak, and actually go ahead and edit this into a more streamlined version right here. So it's really easy to be able to interact on the canvas and on the board together with your teammates, even if they're not in the same office as you. The other cool thing that I wanted to show was in this process of brainstorming and ideating, there's always a lot of content that you might reference during the research phase. And what's great about having Miro is the ability to drop in things like screenshots and even rich media like videos, even docs and spreadsheets. And while I would love to go through each and every one of these, I think the one that is a customer or user favorite is always the one with spreadsheets. So what I have here is just a spreadsheet that I've uploaded onto the board from Google Drive. So this is a Google Sheet. And it's not working, but we'll open it up anyways. All right, this is live, guys. This is what happens. So we'll show you this afterwards, but essentially what you can do is you can copy and paste cells and they become sticky notes. And I actually just learned today that if your cells are of a specific color, we will actually match the color of the cell and what's in the cell to the color of the sticky note, or at least the one that's closely matching. So for instance, if these headers are black, then we'll try to map this to the most close color of sticky note just to kind of preserve some of the structure that you've kind of drawn up here in this spreadsheet. I'm kind of sad I can't show that to you guys. You'll have to follow up in the Slack channel. So the next thing after that is journey mapping. Now, journey mapping is great because really this puts the customer front and center. You're really looking at how you are going to really develop this feature or product exactly for the customer, and you're looking at different touch points through the process here. And again, this is a pre-made template in Miro, And what's great is that if you have specific templates that your team regularly uses, you can actually save those templates and use them across the team. And we're coming up with an update to that where you'll actually be able to share across the entire company. And what's great here is that within this template, you have some of these pinpoint abilities to ask for feedback. So what I did here was I just went over to the comment tool. I can go ahead and ask for feedback on this very particular part here of the customer journey, and mention my coworker Lindsay here, who's on the other side, and ask her, hey, can you take a look? What's great here is that I can mention her, it's in context, and then all of the replies are threaded. Thanks, Lindsay. So what's great here is that you really have everything in context. And again, this just allows you to be able to just have a single source of truth. You exactly know where to look for additional feedback. The next part that I want to go through really quickly is user story mapping. So typically after this journey mapping, you'll start to actually develop the user stories. And again, what this activity does is really put the customer at the center of it all. And you're thinking through all of the relevant tasks and thinking about how you're going to potentially plan this as far as your sprints and your releases go. Now, the cool thing about this is that while sticky notes are great for initial ideation, actually sticky notes in Miro convert into other objects. So if you go ahead and you just click on a sticky note, you'll see this switch type here, and you can convert it into a Miro card, which allows you to then expand and provide additional context here. The other thing that's cool is that you can tag all of these, and I'm just gonna include a few tags here just to kind of give you a demonstration of what this looks like. I can, again, make sure Lindsay's able to see it and she's tagged there, and then, of course, set a date. So if I zoom out here, what's great is that these tags are all searchable. So if you go into the upper right-hand corner here on the magnifying glass, you'll see that if I search one of the tags, you'll actually see them pop up here. And when I click on it, it'll take me exactly to that specific place of the board. Now, what's great about Miro cards is that you can have this expanded information, because sometimes a sticky note just doesn't contain everything you want. So you actually end up with a user story map that you can build off of that. Now, what's great is that actually these cards can then convert into actual Jira cards. And while I won't show that right now, that's something that we know that a lot of users love, and especially with product engineering and design, sometimes there are teams that aren't big fans of Jira. You can actually pull those cards right in and be able to shuffle them as needed, even in something like a user story map. So final things here, this is even great for designers who use InVision or Sketch, or even want to do some lo-fi wireframing. So on the product end, this is a great way of kind of just figuring out if everything will fit together, showing the outline of UI requirements, thinking through kind of the navigation logic, and more. And again, we do have integrations with InVision and Sketch. And so if you check those out, they are available in our knowledge base. Feel free to look at how those things are set up. But that becomes a really great way to contextualize everything and make sure everything's accessible on one board. And the final thing here is a basic diagram. I think even though this is basic diagramming, it's powerful to show kind of the high level overview of the exact process that you went through. A lot of the times in research and in the think it phase, there's a lot that teams are kind of digging in and kind of looking at from different angles. And when it comes to including stakeholders and involving them, asking for feedback, going through a revision process, it is better to kind of give the high level overview than to go through all of the different steps that you've kind of taken to look at this from different angles. And so the great part here is that within Miro itself, you actually never have to copy and paste anything to, Google Slides or to a PowerPoint or to even Keynote to turn it into a presentation. What you can do is you can put a frame around it and then go right into presentation mode and even go in full screen. And so this is an example of exactly what you can do to just stay within Miro, and you never have to context switch by going to different apps through the process. So I'm actually going to go back into presentation mode, and we're going to go to the next phase. So the next stage here is the build it stage. And you'll notice here, there's a few more sticky notes here because there's usually a couple of more people that are involved in this process. And really the fundamental question that's being asked here is the MVP good enough for end users? And does it actually fulfill the product vision that was set in the stage previous? So in the build it stage of the product development lifecycle, there are a couple of things that happen here. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but this just gives you an example of what you can potentially do in Miro. So you might have planning sessions, and you might actually have visual management and some lightweight project management to manage all of the tasks associated to a sprint or a release. You'll also be regularly communicating and collaborating with your teammates, especially they're distributed or you have team members that are remote. They are able to be involved in the process just as anyone would, no matter where they're located. The other thing here is throughout this process, you definitely do want to take stakeholders on the journey. You want to be able to give them the big picture overview of the entire project, and you'll be able to do that again with presentation mode and kind of walking them through different areas of the board. And then finally here, I included retrospectives. I think it's important to always debrief at the end of specific sprints, and this just allows the team to have alignment, to adjust as needed as they go through the process. So I'm gonna go down here and show you an example of what this might look like in Miro. And actually, sorry, before I go through that, I did wanna go through how the research artifacts are really important in this stage and how it actually aligns and gets everyone on the same page. So one thing that we use here at Miro is Confluence. And what's great with Confluence is that it can be a source of truth for text space and for documentation and for requirements and product specs. But along with that, actually, you can embed a Miro board right in there. And you'll see in this example here, you see kind of cursors flying around. And actually what that means is that whenever anyone's actually in this board and you're looking at this Confluence page, you can actually see live cursors and people collaborating. So it becomes a really great way to kind of tie all of the research artifacts and make everyone feel very involved in this entire process, and make sure that you actually keep the context of how you initially started and kicked off this entire product development lifecycle. One of the things that tends to happen throughout this lifecycle is that the vision gets lost, and one way to combat that is to make sure that everything's accessible to everyone. So one other thing that we recently launched in the last couple of months is the Kanban framework within Miro. And I wanted to show you what this looks like. So again, there's a bidirectional sync with Jira, but what you can do here is you'll see that as I kind of scroll down, the headers follow, so you'll always have a good idea of what these swim lanes are. But this becomes your Kanban project board where you can kind of track throughout your sprints across different teams. And what's great here is that it actually does provide a count of how many tasks are associated under each swim lane for every single team. So you'll see here team A has a backlog here, and you'll see kind of how many are in progress across the swim lanes, how many are done, and you'll be able to track at a high level across these different teams. So what's great is when the Jira integration is enabled here, you'll actually be able to open these cards and edit them, and there will be a bidirectional sync that also updates on Jira's end, and then vice versa. So the other favorite here are retrospectives, and we love doing retrospectives here. It helps us to improve at every single sprint that passes and keeps our team aligned. So this is an example of a retrospective that I quickly put together. Again, you can access this template here in the templates picker on the side. But what is really powerful in Miro is the ability to do things like dot voting or even voting in Miro itself. So you can have users and different people on your team actually go ahead and vote for the things that they feel are most important and of priority. And so you can easily set this up. You can create your own custom template where all of this is already a part of the template when you actually put it on the board. And it makes it really easy for teams to just get right in there and do their retrospective. And again, instead of dot voting, there's also an option to vote within Miro on the board. And I'm not going to set this up right now, but I'll just click it just to show you. So you'll see here, you can title the vote session, you can set a duration, you can allocate the number of votes that each person has, and you can actually set the voting area. So if I wanted to do this retrospective, I could go ahead and make sure that that specific board is the one that other team members are going to be voting on. And then additionally, you can actually specify exactly which objects you want them to vote on. And what's great is that all of these sessions voting sessions are recorded, so you can actually look back and see what the results are over time, which is really great for context purposes. Now, if you are practicing safe, not a problem at all. You can actually easily drop in a PI planning board. And this is quite a template that we have. So I just wanted to show you here what this looks like. So I went into the templates picker and we see a partially filled out planning board, PI planning board here. And you'll just see exactly how massive this is. So again, what's great here is you can easily zoom out. I can move it around. You can include different frames that then become part of the template. And you'll see here you can map dependencies across different iterations. You can go ahead and do a roam board. You can perform a confidence vote and then start to divvy out tasks across different teams here across different iterations. So this is just another way that a lot of distributed and remote teams actually either reduce or completely eliminate travel entirely. This solution is probably the best one out there in terms of being able to actually see what's on the board, because if you've ever been in an in-person PI planning session, you know that part of the battle is just to be able to see what's actually on the board. And in this way, everyone has their own view and they can log in very easily into Miro and be able to contribute as they need to. So I have just two more things here. The last stages here of the last few stages of the product dev lifecycle, according to this kind of framework, is to actually ship the product or feature. Again, you'll see here that on the side, there's actually a couple more people that are involved, including a product marketer here or the marketing team in general. And while this isn't completely comprehensive, these are some of the aspects that are done in the ship it phase. So it's packaging, pricing, and messaging. It's delivering strategies and plans, and even collecting feedback. And what's great about Miro is that you're able to do affinity mapping quite easily. So this is actually a real board that I copied and pasted from something we're currently working on right now. We've conducted a lot of customer interviews and we started to bucket them by theme. And what's really great is you are just able to move sticky notes as you need to. And when you have 2, 3, 4, 10 people, 20 people, you can get this done fairly easily and be able to do this without having to kind of transcribe all of your sticky notes. They're here for you to shuffle and discuss and move around. The last phase here of the product dev lifecycle is the tweak it phase. And this is where you're really thinking through what is the general reception of users when you put out the product or feature in the wild? Are there improvements that are necessary? Should we even rethink the feature and product completely? This kind of is a good segue back to the beginning of the cycle to think it. And some of the ways to get there are doing things like a feedback review session, doing additional prototyping and doing iterative A/B testing. It's actually going in and tweaking product and process requirements. And again, utilizing retrospectives along the way. So just to quickly show you what this might look like, again, this is a real example of an A/B testing workflow that we have been working on for the login. And we were able to just drop in screenshots of the actual login screens and add comments and sticky notes for additional context. And the results of that A/B test were actually also presented and analyzed within Miro as well. And so I'm just going to quickly go through this. But you'll see kind of that from start to finish in the product dev lifecycle, you really can utilize Miro at every single stage. And it's highly customizable, it's flexible, and you have an entire whiteboard to work with. So just to recap, here are the stages we went through: think it, build it, ship it, and tweak it. Miro is great for distributed and remote and co-located teams. It allows teams to collaborate on every single stage of the product dev lifecycle. There's so many different options, templates, and it really affords you the creativity and flexibility to do each and every one of these within a board. But at the end of the day, I think sometimes it still feels a little bit like Bop It. And I think that's just the reality of working in product dev and thinking about delivering products and features. But at least with Miro, you really are able to enable and empower your teams to collaborate better together.
Yeah, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.